situation in Australia, and I thought I'll get a reply about 4 or 5 days. I got a huge letter next morning, Sunday morning, and they wrote in capital letters, "We are shocked, absolutely shocked. We assumed that every church, every Pathfinder, every adventurer, every section of the church taught creation." And by creation, I mean creation apologetics. It's not just saying God created the world, he made things on this day and that. No, we are the generation that are getting attacked. We are in end times, and the devil hates creation more than any other topic. So he's going to attack. Ken Ham told me when he rang me, he said, when I decided to do the creation, he said, "I hope you have a very strong backbone and a very brave, because you will be attacked. The devil hates the foundation of the Bible more than anything else. And if you do it, you will be under attack." But he said, "I'm very proud of you doing it." And I was very nervous, but he said, "No, we'll be praying for you, do it." And I have been attacked for years and years and years, but I keep doing it. And as I get older, when I got to 70, they said, "Oh, you're probably a bit old to be teaching now." I was teaching at Heritage, and the new headmistress, I knew she didn't believe in it. She said, "Oh, look, you're a bit old, you've been doing it." I said, "No, I'm not." So I've kept going, and COVID was the only thing that stopped me. But I care about the kids. I care about everyone's kids, and the devil is out raging like a roaring lion to get your kids, your grandkids, your great-great-grandkids. He's out to get them, and you only have to look at the news or go down the street or find out what he's doing. And as I've been reading and seeing the kids, everything since October the 7th, everyone keeps saying the world's going crazy. And they say there's Marxism, and I'd heard of Karl Marx, but I really didn't know who he was. You know, I knew about Hitler, but I hadn't heard of Karl Marx. And I thought, I better start studying this up, because I love learning new things every day. So I started looking it up, and then I get an email from Ken Ham, "How to Wokeproof your kids." And I thought, wow, that's what I need to do. I've got a backbone, so I'll do it. And I'm 82, almost 82, so I really don't care. I will do it. And because we need to tell people the truth. So I started studying about Karl Marx, and I had shivers going up and down my spine. I couldn't believe it. He is the most influential person since he came. And he was round about 1860. He was a philosopher at the time of Charles Darwin. And I've studied all about Charles Darwin. But Karl Marx was an evil man, absolutely evil. And he hated God, hated black people, hated Jews. He hated that the Bible said we are going downhill and it gets so bad, and then Jesus coming back and is going to be made all new. He didn't want that. He hated the Bible because there were the 10 Commandments. There were thou shalt not rules. He hated that. You have to love your neighbour as yourself. You have to love your enemies. No, he didn't want that. And when Charles Darwin did his, I've never used one of these, most people just read the first part on the origin of species. They don't read by means of natural selection, or this part they don't read, the preservation of the favoured races in the struggle for life. They don't see that. It's 1859, that book changed the world. It was 100 years before I left high school. And and see the means of natural selection. We've always been taught till just recently, natural selection does it, it changes everything. No, it doesn't. You haven't seen it on the TV or written later. Nature can't select. No, they don't tell you. It's epigenetics. You haven't seen that on the news. You don't know what epigenetics is. It is so complicated. It gave me the most roaring headache. I got a DVD, I watched it, and I wrote down every line. It took me a whole day, and then I read it, and it blew my mind. And so then I put it away for about 5 years, and I got it out, and I could understand it a bit. But it's simply that when God created, he put this tiniest thread, smaller than silk, probably about 1,000 times smaller than silk, all where the DNA, and he had little switches along it. So if a little fish is swimming along and he accidentally goes into a cave and it's dark and he can't get out, well, epigenetics switches off his sight, the DNA for his sight, and then this proboscis starts growing on his head so he can move around and feel. And so that starts to grow, and then he sees through feeling. And then if he suddenly gets out of the cave, epigenetics comes again. They switch off the blind for his sight and switch the eyesight back on, and this part drops off. Now, how would that happen by chance? That's just one example. Remember when God made 2 of each creature and they were sent out to multiply, and after the flood too. It was epigenetics that would change everything. God knew all the conditions that would come, and he had it all set up. And then when he made people, he had it all set up. He made the light colour. He knew they'd be in the cooler climates, and the noses would be longer and pointed for the warmth in the nostrils. And then when the Aboriginals finally, not 45 or 65,000 years ago, excuse me, 4.5 or maybe 4,000 years ago, when they got to Australia, they spread out, but the noses were flat. Flatter, you'll see the Aborigines, their noses are flat. That was a special way for the hot weather, and the skin was darker and the eyes were darker and the hair. God had it all worked out. And that's where my blood boils with the racism nonsense. There is no such thing as racism. The favoured races, God made on day 6, he made 2 from the dirt, he made 2 canine kind, they're the dogs, 2 feline kind, probably 2 bovine kind, the cattle, 2 of every type of creature. He'd already, the day before, made all the birds and the fish. And then last he made mankind. Mankind. Not black people, yellow people, all of these. No, he made mankind, and there's not favoured races. Karl Marx hated the word male and female. Hated that. So when Darwin's book came out, he was thrilled because he could then bring in the word gender. So he started that word gender, and you could choose. Now you can be anything. You can be a cat or a dog or whatever, binary or all of that nonsense. I won't even tolerate that. That's ridiculous. It's male and female, end of story. And then, so this went on, and he was so corrupt, and he was taken, Karl Marx, with violence. He was extreme racism. And the kids are marching. They don't even know what they're doing. And then the consequences. Here's Karl Marx. And then we have Karl Marx, Leon Trotsky, Joseph Stalin, Hitler and Pol Pot. I couldn't hack Pol Pot. I didn't even look up him. But the other couple of years ago, my husband and I go travelling every night on YouTube. We visit all these countries in the world, have a lovely time, and then we decide to visit India or the caves, and we go everywhere. He'll say at night, "Where are we going tonight?" Well, let's go to Slovakia or Ireland, and then I said one night, how did the Germans get so caught up with Hitler? How could normal people? So we watched one on Hitler, and then they had all these others, and I couldn't believe it. When he went to bed early with some of them, and I said, they had to go through this, at least we can look at it. And it was absolutely wicked. There's Karl Marx. He's the father of the communist system. He was the most influential person. He hated blacks and Jews. No wonder the kids are marching about hating blacks, and they're not really hating the blacks while they're marching, but underneath. And it is dreadful. Then Trotsky, he was so evil, Darwin's book made him intoxicated. You just look at people's eyes. The Bible said the eyes are the window of the soul. Just look at them. He murdered millions. Trotsky, and see, they were so pleased that when Charles Darwin brought his book out, it negated the need for God. We didn't have to, they could do anything. And Karl Marx wanted this utopia. But he had to get rid of not only the blacks and the Jews. You have to be good and strong. So if you're the slightest bit disabled, you're gone. If you weren't highly intelligent, you're gone. If you're a gypsy, you're gone. What else? If you're gay or you're gone. So these LGB and that, they're marching with them. They have no idea. And so when it gets to Stalin, these people all followed. When it got to him, he was evil personified. There's no standards anymore. They just do what they like. And he was so ill, so bad, anyone was in fear of him. They didn't know. The Red Army, he wanted to annihilate those all that didn't fit what he wanted. He annihilated heaps in the Red Army, 100,000 priests, monks, nuns, Russian Orthodox. He shot 1.5 million Russian Orthodox. 39,000 other groups, or most of his old friends, 800,000 prisoners. He zotted all of those. And he said, mowing the lawn, the grass, is no different to killing millions of people. Because we are all like nature. We are just we have evolved, so we're just bits of atoms and they're thrown together. So it's no different. The grass ended up grass, we ended up humans. So mowing the grass is no different to killing 1.5 million. And then they are allowing that influence. And I heard yesterday Peter Credlin talking about Marxism. And she said, we have a red mist creeping across the whole Western society. And she said, the West has to wake up. It's time to tell the truth. Don't let your kids get involved. Sit down and educate them. Don't worry about being offended. We've got to stand up, and our church has a great controversy. We know more than any other group of people of what's happening. We need to get out and tell those kids and rescue, not just sit here and come here every week. We need to, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we need to do something. We need to educate. Charlie's been educated while I've been doing this. He said, "Who's left, Mum?" Nan. I said, "Not many. Just they zot everyone." Stalin killed so many people he didn't know what to do with their bodies, and so he built the roads with the bodies. They were like the gravel for all the big roads. And Hitler with the youth, when Hitler came along, there was Boss, the fashion label, and they all knew that you have to get the kids. You don't start on the adults or the old people. They're set in their ways. You get the kids. So he started making uniforms and getting the kids. Boss were making these beautiful uniforms and getting the kids to come out and build the roads. It's worth watching. It's pretty horrific, but it's worth watching. We have to wake up. Darwin, there's no accountability. And it's communism, and these young people think communism's okay. And then you hear about this woke. That's a stupid word, because you say, "I woke up this morning." You're bright and cheery. Well, how can you be in this if you're woke? I said to my sister-in-law, "The world's going crazy. No one's saying anything." She said, "Peter Credlin is on Sky News," but I said, "We need more than Peter Credlin in Australia. We need hundreds of Peter Credlins and Andrew Bolts." And they started, what they did was, right in the beginning, Karl Marx, what he did, he got his theory, and then he got onto all the big companies, and they loved the survival of the fittest and all that. Then they didn't have to worry about helping the poor, because they were zotted. Any poor, you're gone. So you had to be wealthy, you had to be bright, you had to be the right colour, had to be white, had to be all this to survive. And they then stopped helping the poor. And then they started universities. Hello? And then they joined with the Islamics to teach in the universities. They've done a magnificent job. If you watch those marches over in America, Sydney Uni. And they got onto all the civil servants. They got into the legal side. So that's why a lot of people don't do well in the courts. It's all happening. And then there's Hitler. Pol Pot, I wouldn't watch him. I remember I was teaching when he came. He was so bloodthirsty, and I saw on the TV all these big piles, mountains of skulls of his own people. I thought, no, I've watched enough. I can't watch him. But these people that are coming along, I had to cut my slide short. They want to destroy free speech. This is the woke. Destroy freedom of religion. Sorry, when you get old, it doesn't work as well. Destroy the presumption of innocence. Cancel people. You're not allowed to think for yourself. I remember when I was teaching at Westport, before I retired, about 5 years before I retired, this teacher came to me and said, "You can't call them boys and girls, they're children." I said, "They're boys and girls." I'm sorry. They were boys and girls. And then before I left, they started with all this sexual stuff. We had to teach kindergarten. I said, "I'm sorry." This is way back in 97. That's when it all started. And I said, "Okay, yes," but I didn't. And the kids aren't going to come home and tell you what they're taught. They're not. So this woke stuff, you haven't connected to the threat to the traditional family. When I was there before I left, we're up to the 3rd generation dole. One little girl in kinder had 3 dads by April. Last time I heard, she was in jail. these poor kids, what hope have they had? And then this movie, I've lent it to Sebastian. I thought it was on YouTube, but they only talk about... This was a shock. This is the history of education, because these people knew they had to get the kids. So school was it. And in those days, back then, the parents homeschooled them, and the church and the parents were responsible for the kids. These are some of the people who were homeschooled. I'll quickly go through. This is quite funny, the comic thing. It shows who hops on the bus, the big school bus. And they started a normal school, because homeschooling's not normal. Where's it gone? Charlie, it's not working. Oh, it is here. Robert Owens. Parents, you are deficient in raising your kids. Bad habits is parents' value. This is back years ago. He was one of the earliest. And they got the education system from the Prussians in Russia. Horace Mann, he was lovely. And then communism. He hopped on, Karl Marx hopped on early with his manifesto. And that was, remember, he had 7 or 10 pacts with the devil. So we are getting taught straight from the devil. And I forgot to tell you, when Darwin wrote his Origin of Species, I think it was Ellen White that wrote that the devil was standing behind helping him. So we're getting it straight from Lucifer. Oh, yeah, you got to get rid of the family, home education. They have to get rid of anything that's good, and you hop on the school bus. Oh, Sigmund Freud, he was the mad evolution. He get rid of religion, mad evolutionary science. John Dewey, they're not allowed to be individualists, they've got to be social, we've got to have a collective society. And this is way back in the 1800s. Oh, good group on the bus already. Oh, this man stood up for it, but he didn't have a hope. It's the Bible. Then look at the flags, they've got the Nazis are all on the bus. And then public schools, all children taught gay history. They were taught from little kids, you could be gay, but you don't know yet. If you put ideas into kids' heads young, they can have a dramatic effect. My mother, I'm sure she didn't mean it, but when I was young, there were 6 of us and we all had our jobs, and she said, "You're not clever like my older sister and my younger brother. You're not clever like them. So you'll be good to do the housework and mind the kids, so you won't do the cooking, or, you know, you don't need to go to uni or anything like that. You'll be good at that." So that was all my jobs: housework, minding the kids. My sister didn't have to do that. And when I got a scholarship, the last year of school, I got a scholarship to uni, but I wouldn't take it because I wasn't clever. It'd be far too hard, so I went to teachers' college because I knew that'd be okay. And all through, I'd be asked to do something, do a degree, to go up for 3D training, and I thought, no, I can't do that, I'm not clever. You put an idea in your child's head, it can stay. And if they tell them when they're little they could be gay, what's that going to do to their mind? That's where we're up to. Now this one, I don't know any of the high school kids. Boys over there, were you shown Haeckel's drawings? Ernest Haeckel decided to help Charles Darwin, so he made up these pictures of, see the top there? How we evolved. And this is one taught in Asian school, and this is what they really like. And I have, what did I do with it? Oh, this one used to get gasps out of the kids at Heritage. Because when I had a miscarriage, the doctor said, oh, you wouldn't even know, it's baby at 3 months, it's just a blob. You wouldn't know anything about it. This is a baby at 3 months. That's the exact size. And the head is a lot bigger because of the brain, the development. You can see even the fingernails. That's at 12 weeks, a child. So all it's done is taught lies these days. Everything is lies. So he helped. And when I was teaching at Heritage, I'd go on about the years and garbage evolution. And then we discovered the kids were going to the library, getting a biro and marking all the textbooks, scribbling out millions of years and putting 6,000 years. And he nearly had a fit. He said, we'll get into so much trouble. But the kids, and they'd do me a card at the end of the year, and they'd have garbage bins everywhere, and they got the message. And see, this is the 7 C's of history. You must teach them. What I learned, if you want to teach kids something, you have to go over and over and over it. Not 1 or 2 times, you have to go over and over till it goes in their brain. And that's why when we used to teach kids tables, we'd have the whole room covered, all the walls covered, with tables and all the things that kids had to learn. And every morning, I had kinder, first and second, we'd go around the walls and we'd read the walls. And when the painters came and took it down, we still read the walls because it had gone into the kids' heads. They don't teach we're not allowed to do rote learning anymore because it's not good. Yeah, because they learnt it. We had to teach the kids by 2nd class all their tables. High schools now, they haven't done it by year 6. And they knew them. And we had to teach grammar, we had to teach all these things, and the kids knew them. You went over and over it. And when I started my creation room, it took me 5 years to fill it, I taught off the walls. And so this is the creation. This is one of the walls. I've started filling them up, and I'd ask questions so we could do a lesson from the walls. I'd go up on... I was asked to teach Sabbath school because there weren't enough teachers and weren't enough kids. So I asked if I could do creation. So I'd go up on Friday and clean the room, vacuum it, disinfect the chairs, get all the pencils ready. And then we taught off the walls. We'd go right around. And I trained them to get there at 9:30. They're all there at 9:30, ready to go. And we weren't allowed to look at the clock, and then they'd say, oh, wow, it's 10 to 11. They hadn't even thought of the time, and they'd have to go up to church. But there was so much to learn. And when the room was finished, I had to spill, it was like a volcano. It went out to the hallway, and it slowly crept down. And then it crept along the other side and it started to turn the corner, and Pastor Joseph said, don't go past the stairs. So we stopped, and I'd change it a couple of times a year because it'd take me a week to change it. But the kids looked at the pictures and they learnt from it. And all the kids that didn't come to creation, they had to walk down the hallways, so they read the walls. And we used to get all the presidents and people from overseas come, and they loved it. See, you just, and that was this is the 7 C's. See, creation, corruption, and you'd go over and over and over every week. I'll have a look at that one, that boat, mything the boat. If you see that in a kindergarten Sabbath school, ask them to take it down, please, because that makes Noah's Ark a myth. See, they put the giraffe's head. That's not it. It's a huge, big ship. It's enormous. Look over there. See, and we teach all these things, and you go over it, and it never gets boring. And then Christ's cross consummation. And then Eden King and his mum did that when we did the VBS. A beautiful Tower of Babel. All the bricks I filled, we used to fill up all the walls. And then those glass cabinets. One day I was given direction, I had to get rid of everything. So it was, while I was downsizing, it was very traumatic. And I thought, what am I going to do to those beautiful glass cabinets? Betty Joy had got them from the conference. And we seen you do kinds. Down the bottom have canine kinds. And the kids could see it. And then you have feline kinds. And mankind. We did not evolve. And then we did the Ice Age, and I'd fill up all the things on the back. And some of the children have got an Ice Age book. It's fabulous, but when you first read it, it'll be like gobbledygook if you don't know the Ice Age. It was for me. It took me ages to understand. And see, did an Ice Age display. Ice Age is a fabulous topic. It came straight after the flood. And then all the walls would cover everything. And Betty Joy got different animals there from the Ice Age. Those beautiful glass cabinets came from the conference, and the school up at Wollumbar, I think, they sent a big truck down and took all of those. And I said, why do you need a big truck? So they could stick it to the side, have straps. And I had to give away all my stuff. There was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures and all sorts of stuff. It was terribly traumatic. See, the woolly mammoth, those are Triptodon at the back. Triptodon, those little creatures, and they've found those in Death Valley. It used to be lush and green in the Ice Age. And this is the chart. Each of those sections is 10 years. See, catastrophe was fantastic. And see down the bottom here, out of the Tower of Babel, that line is the only one that goes right across without any break, and that is China. It's the only country that came out of the Tower of Babel and there was no break. All the others, you can spend hours and you can still buy them. They're not that dear. And you put them on the wall. They're fantastic. And anything you want, you'll find in history on this chart. Then we did dinosaurs, and it was just fantastic. And then the dinosaur display, and when I went to Heritage, it was good to teach there because they were a captive audience. They had to come whether they liked it or not, and they had to be quiet whether they liked it or not. No one talked except me, or they were out, and it was really good, and they loved it. And when I'd go to the playground, they'd say every week, "Are you coming to my class?" And I'd go, "Yes," and they'd go, "Yes!" That never happened at school. And they just loved it because it was different. I didn't know who the kids were, had no idea. I went every week and they just loved it. See, the Ice Age. They were just people. They could have been brain scientists. If you think about something, my young brother was the top, I think, I can't think, some scientific thing in the world when he died. He was only young, and he only worked for 30 years. He was a scientist, And if he had worked for 800 years, imagine what he could have done. He only worked for 30. Now, the people before the flood were cleverer than us. They used all of their brain, and they worked for years and years and years and years. And we think we're clever, and they're much taller, they were stronger. We are weaklings compared to the people before the flood. The Ice Age, that was a fabulous topic. And this is God's gift to creation. When Mount St. Helens erupted, the volcano, it erupted, and the fellow that did it, Austin, he was a top geologist, America, and everything he'd been taught was blown away in one day. All what he's taught, and he had to change totally because it erupted out of the side, and there were 1 million pine trees around the lake, 1 million. And with this huge big swish from the volcano, it ripped out 1 million pine trees, stripped all the branches off them and the leaves, and dumped it in the lake. 1 million in 1 minute. And the things I still watch it, and it was going to take 200 years for any creature to come back. They came back within 20. First one that came back were the spiders that flew in. They were flying spiders. And they said if you want to watch a good video, watch Mount St. Helens. It's God's gift to mankind. It shot evolution. Me up. I homeschooled him once a week, and they took me to America. They said, you're not going to one place, and the father used to be a tour guide in America, so they took me, and I got it very cheaply, and we went to 22 states. And when I came home, I thought, no wonder people in Australia don't believe the Bible. There's no evidence here. Over in America, there's every bit of evidence, and there's woolly mammoth. Miles and I, we just came across this thing. And when I went to the Bible Lands Reformation tour, when I came home and landed in Sydney, the first thought was, no wonder people don't believe the Bible in Australia. It's just over there in the Middle East, you see it everywhere. And when I was in Paris, I went and sat with these young people, and they were all atheists, but they decided to go to the Middle East, and they said, if you go to the Middle East, you can't help but believe, because it's all there, but we got nothing to show. It's all evolved. And I felt really guilty because I hadn't brought my kids up in the church. I was brought up in church myself and left the Presbyterian. And I thought, this is terrible. So when I came back, the Pentecostals, 10 years then the Adventists, my kids, I hadn't brought them up. We were three-wheelers. You wheeled in when you christened, you wheeled in when you're married, you come in the special car, and when you die, you wheeled into a church. They're three-wheelers. And so I thought, I haven't brought mine, so David was onto drugs too much then. He was about 15, and Phil wanted to come. And so he worked every afternoon, and I sent him to the Middle East. You wouldn't do that now, but I sent him and went to the airport by himself, and he met 4 pastors there. And I thought the best way to he did 2 years Bible study. The pastor said, you can't go there if you don't know the Bible study. So he didn't go to church, but he went there. And it was the best thing I ever did, because you see it for yourself and you can't not believe. But nowadays, I don't think you'd be game. See? Oh, that's just a part. Oh, kids, I had to watch the kids. They'd have to have their hands behind their back when they walked around the Tower of Babel because little fingers love to souvenir things. And so instead of checking their pockets, we'd just make their hands behind their back. Oh, there's a little trip to things. Smile-a-dons. Quickly, this is some of the displays we had. Oh, they're fabulous fossils. I brought those from the GC. Beautiful ones. There's a trilobite. They're all in the Cambrian layer. And this is a chart. I was going to show. This was fabulous to teach. It's like this, and it was. McKay gave it to me, and I coloured it and stuck it together. He found it in an old second-hand. It was dispensation, so I chopped off the end of it. And it was so easy to show. Kids have to visualise things. You've got to have pictures. You've got to have your walls flooded with pictures. They've got to be able to see it because they can't imagine. This, I had the nice clean green, and then the curse. That was brighter red. And them all coming together for the flood. And then going, and it was easy for the kids to understand the old history. And then we came, these are some pictures, beautiful laminated pictures I've got. They were this year because the 7 Seas. So I wonder if any of the Sabbath schools would like these. They're about this big. They're all laminated. Doesn't matter, you just leave them there and change them every now and again. Kind, see? We're all mankind. The Asians have a layer of fat on the eyelids. I'm not sure what for. And see, that explains what the ark is. It makes sense. It's not a little tub with a giraffe sticking out, head out. See, it's the length of 2 big buses and 3 giraffes. The Tower of Babel, these are all pictures I've got. There's lots more at home. See, we won race. Oh, this is when I did the Creation Sabbath. This was the hardest one I did. Vinny got me to do the Chinese language, and I said, that's too hard. So I had to study for months, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever studied. And then I found a Chinese doctor, and I went to her place, and she said, you've taught the kids all the right letters, but you're using the wrong pen. And I said, well, I'm not Chinese. I'd been to the art shops and got all pens. She gave me the proper one. It was so easy. So she said, you've got all the characters right. And I said, well, it's a missionary book. And so she helped us with decorations and some costumes, and the kids did the service, and she came. It was the first Christian service she'd ever been to. They moved to Sydney. But she could not believe it, and Confucius offered the people in China half his kingdom if they could understand, if they could tell the story of the characters. They did the characters on little bones from creation to after the fall, the Tower of Babel. And then Mao Zedong, I read recently, got rid of all of them. Anything that would do with the Bible, they've gone. So there's Kel, and that's Denise's little granddaughter. She came and she was only about 5. And she was this tiny little thing, and she had the most inquiring mind. And the kids loved it, and I had about 4 kids from other churches, and they loved it. There's the Chinese doctor. And then we did the VBS, and it was fantastic. We did that once a year, and it went for a week. And it was so much work. It was about 10 months' work. We had people come from Brisbane, from down Adelaide, down south, they used to come and take their holidays. And the rooms were decorated unbelievably. There was Charlie, and they dressed up on the last day, and I'd make his costume, and I had this beautiful costume ready. He was going to be a spy for the next one, and they stopped them. We'd done them for 7 years, so the good news was Andy Mathis did it last July. He did it, so it was fantastic. So they had fun. There were some of the kids singing. We had kids from all the churches. We had kids from everywhere. And I used to get help from an Anglican church down in Sydney, and they said, you need to do it for 8 years, and then the kids are used to it, and then they've grown out of it, and they'll come back as helpers. And I had one guy turn up on his bike from Grace Church, and he said, would you guys like some helpers? And I said, sure do. He brought his whole family the next day, and they came from the whole week. And when we did this, we had the new Anglican minister from Trinity Church. He stayed the whole week. He brought his kids, and he said he'd never seen a program like it. It was Ken Ham's Answers in Genesis. And so he offered me a week's holiday at Manly. The Anglicans had a holiday home for nothing for doing marvellous work for the kids. But I couldn't get away, but it was a very good thought. And they were so well behaved, and they came from everywhere. And when we stopped, the other churches were furious. They said, where are we going to learn creation from? Because they knew it was too much work. They couldn't do it. So it never happened again. And I was going to continue, I didn't care how long, till Charlie had gone through the program. And he would have finished this year. But he only did it when he was once. Right. We will have the last hymn now. And then I have bags for all the families, and I also have bags for the young people, because most of you haven't learnt this creation, so I want you to take a bag. Don't throw it out. Give it to someone else, or we recycle it. I think it's gold.